Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Hey, ba-dum-bum-bum-bum. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to KocoSports Slow Burn Podcast. I am the huge one, aka the idiot Dave Koco from DAVEKOCO.com. And I'm joined by the Australian manager of champions, Yuri the Black. Yuri the Black, hot tag to you.
Hot tag, baby. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast again as your co-host. Today is going to be a bit of a fun episode. I'm quite looking forward to discussing what that's about and what really sort of brought us into everything. If you get what I mean, I'll get you to explain it, Dave. I'm excited, my friend.
We talk about some negative topics, but sometimes when you love something so much and you're passionate, you complain so much. So I think this is to go back, rewind. We're going to go into Time Machine. You're in the Black. Welcome to the Slow Burn Time Machine. And we're going to go back to when I wasn't a loser in Japan, but I was a Jersey boy. I grew up as a Jersey boy, and we'll go back to when you were an Australian shrimp on the Barbie.
I was just the innocent kid who loved his wrestling.
Now, I was passed around a lot as kids, but in New Jersey, you know, this is Northeast America. In New Jersey, sports just ruled. Like, that's all anyone talked about. And in New Jersey, growing up, when I grew up, I know I've seen every WrestleMania. I know, I've seen a lot of events, not live, obviously, but I'm old. That's the point of that sentence. I don't know where I was going to go with that sentence, but I'm old. But I remember, the adults in my life were like, yeah, baseball, football, hockey, basketball, pro wrestling, boxing, all the same. So I just grew up where pro wrestling was considered a sport, and I really liked the stuff that was more sports related. But yeah, we'll get more into that. But yeah, let's get into it now. I don't know where our segue went with that, but yeah, I just remember my other co-host Boom Boom. Don't get jealous. He grew up in the South but loved WWE. I grew up in the North and loved NWA and WCW. So it's like bizarro worlds. And the reason why I liked WCW and NWA way more, AWA, USWA, these are some of the promotions I used to watch as a kid. I liked it because it felt like a sport. It felt real. Now, granted, they still had some gimmicks. They still had over-the-top characters, but it wasn't insulting. And I remember being like 6 years old around that time. And, people would ask me, like, why don't you like WWF? That's what it was called back in the day. Why don't you like WWF? And I kid you not, at 6 years old, I was like, that's for kids. Why would I watch WWF? So, like, in my mind, WCW, NWA, USWA, AWA, Florida Championship Wrestling, which I didn't get to watch that much. I watched it, but it wasn't as easy to get certain wrestling promotions as it is today. You know what I mean? But I remember watching those, being like, "Oh, that's a sport. That's real." Ric Flair, he's real. Dusty Rhodes is real. They're over the top. You also gonna remember Muhammad Ali.
Oh, yeah.
I heard legends and stories about Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson. These were over the top characters. So as a kid, if you could see Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali, why couldn't you see Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes? Where you go to WWF as a kid, and everyone's like, "Oh, WWF is for kids," and I argue that it's not. It's not for kids because when I was a kid, I thought it was dumb. I didn't like Doink the Clown. I know this is going to be me and Yuri the Black are working on a Fire Pro thing. But by the way, I just want you to know, I am definitely the weak part of this tag team. I'm like, oh man. I'm like, we have two jobs, okay? One job, two jobs. I'm like, all I do is talk, and then I'll do the Fire Pro roster. Don't worry about it. That has been on the last thing to do on my list all day. I'm like, oh, I did 19 things in a row. Fire Pro Wrestling. I'll do it tomorrow. And I'm like, I only have one job because we're doing two things. We're doing the Slow Burn podcast.
Priorities, no priorities.
We're doing the Fire Pro Fire Pro Wrestling thing, and all I had to do was sort 4 names to 12 people. That's all I had to do. It's been like 3 weeks. Yuri the Black's like, hey man, while you are working on the Fire Pro roster, he's like, I will just make sure that this podcast gets everywhere. And now I'm pretty sure it's everywhere. But I'd like to apologize. But back on topic here. We'll plug where it is in a second. I did not like WWF, and I do not like The Undertaker. I didn't like characters where I was like, oh, that's like, there had to be enough realism. You know what I mean? Like, Dusty Rhodes was an over-the-top character, but you could see that happening. Ric Flair was an over-the-top character, but obviously it happened. I never saw an MMA boxer second baseman dress up as a clown. I never, you know what I mean? I never saw a dead man walk to pitch relief for the New York Mets. I was never a big WWF fan, so that's why, like, I don't know how old you are, Yuri, but I am very old. That's why a lot of what they call WWE sweaties or, younger people that cover nothing but pro wrestling but don't know past, WrestleMania 20, that's why a lot of them were like, oh, WWE was our childhood. And I was like, that is not the case for older people. WWE was a competitor that killed everything, so I don't know. Like, I find it weird that everyone says WWF and WWE is for kids. And when I was 6 years old and loved pro wrestling, I thought it was dumb. So
yeah,
what was your plug all the work that you're doing, because my Fire Pro Wrestling roster is still not updated. But
so what we've gone ahead and done, guys, we are now, you'll be able to go ahead and like, share, comment, follow, and download the podcast over at podbean.com. So it's slowburn.podbean.com. As well as that, you'll also be able to, for KS Slowburn, go ahead and put at least KocoSports, one word, into Spotify. And we actually have our episodes up on Spotify. We are working on getting on Google Music, and we are also working on getting it on iTunes as well. Waiting for the approval on both of those. So that's going to be exciting times for the podcast going forward. So you'll be able to get it at 4 different places. We've already had a bit of interest, and some people already downloaded the existing 2 episodes off Podbean. So I think it's only onwards and upwards from here, Dave.
All right,
that's for sure.
So, how successful will your job be by the time I finish my FPW roster? You're like, we're on ESPN.
No?
The Slow Burn's on ESPN radio, and we can officially retire. I'm like, I got 2 more days of this roster, okay? Just give me 2 more days.
I guess the best word for it would be a slow burn.
It is the Fire Pro Wrestling roster is a slow burn. Don't worry. Give us time. Yuri the Black. Now let's focus. Go in the time machine. Drink your fountain of youth. You're 6 years old. When did you start watching wrestling? Because I don't remember. I just always remember wrestling was in my life. Do you remember when you started, or was it always in your life like me?
I believe it was always in my life, and I'll tell you why, right? This is probably going, because look, I'm 37 years old, born in 1983, yeah? So, these days, I
young whippersnapper.
But back then, yeah. But it's I'll basically go back in terms of my family and the stories I always heard from my mum, and my uncle and stuff like that. I always heard a story because I'm a grandson of European immigrants that come over from Ukraine and Germany in the 1950s. Mum was born in Germany, and I think it was about 7 to 9 months after she was born, both my grandparents and my mum migrated across to Australia. Over a certain period of time, obviously had my my middle uncle and my youngest uncle, or no, my middle uncle, my youngest uncle, my middle uncle, unfortunately is no longer with us. Um, but I've always heard stories of, in terms of the glory days of Australian wrestling, how it all started for, I think, my family. It was always that 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or it was dinner time. They turned it on Channel 9, and they used to have the original World Championship Wrestling, which was based within Australia. But they did have a lot of the Australian guys. They had a lot of the guys from across the world and a lot of the American guys as a part of that. So, and I always heard stories about everybody hovered around a TV with their dinner. Everyone had to be quiet. The wrestling was on. Right, so I kind of got raised on a lot of the older stuff in terms of just like when it comes to TV and all that sort of stuff. So that was what I first heard. But then apparently, with what my mum was saying, I always liked wrestling even when I was like a kid, close to a baby, whenever it was available to generally be on. And then it was like, what was it? I really got into it around 1991. So that was the year that my grandfather passed, who was my hero. Absolutely love him to death. So I ended up going to Ukrainian school. My grandfather was Ukrainian. In honor of him, went there. I met my best friend Jason. Funny thing is,
son of a bitch, Jason, look out! You got a new best friend. Exactly. Look out, Jason! I'm coming for your spot.
You want to know the funny thing? You want to know the fucking funny thing is about that, Dave?
What's
right?
That?
It was the whole. Oh, where do you live? Oh, I live in X town. I'm like, so do I. What street? I live in that street. I'm like, dude, I live in that street. What number? He lived, like essentially where I lived number 5. He lived number 45. So he was like, what? Because obviously we've got.
I thought this story was going to be a plot twist, and he was your brother, and you never noticed him living in your house. You're like, Yuri, I'm your fucking brother, bro.
So he was essentially on the same side of the road, 20 houses away. Right? So with the way that it kind of worked out, because odds one side, evens one side. And obviously, like, he was the one who really got me really into the wrestling, yeah? Obviously, it's like it was basically a combination of watching the one match on, I think, what was it, the Wide World of Sports on Channel 9, which sometimes you'd have to wait 2-3 hours and they'd have one match from the WWF on the sports program. And as well as that, my fondest memories going down to the video store, hiring out the VHS tapes of watching the old WWF. As well as that, I think the WWF, they didn't really, like, I know that they did a couple of, like, the major pay-per-views and stuff on late at night every so often, but I didn't get to really see that. But I'd always remember watching NBA around midday to about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday or a Sunday, and WCW Worldwide would be on roughly about the same time or about an hour beforehand on one of the opposite channels.
No, it's weird. Is like, because as a kid, you're like, this shit ain't worldwide. And then meanwhile, like, I don't know, 30 years later, you're like, hey, Australian friend, let's talk pro wrestling. You're like, I watch WCW Worldwide. And like the 6-year-old is shitting his pants. Like, what? It really was worldwide?
Yeah. So, like, I guess the funny thing was, it's like, because we got used to watching all the WWF tapes, so you got used to all the same wrestlers. But then it was like, as soon as you watch WCW Worldwide, because obviously the tapes were from like 80s up until that particular point in time, but you're kind of like, hang on a tick. I thought when watching WCW Worldwide and like some of the ex-WWF guys popped up, and I'm like, what are they doing there? They work for the World Wrestling Federation. What are they doing wrestling in WCW? I'm like, oh. But as well as that, also getting to know some of the wrestlers as well. Do you remember those WCW Galoob figures as well? The ones that were just like kind of that one stiff pose?
Oh, yeah, well, dude, without a doubt. And not only that, but I just nostalgia hitting. Not only did I have those, in the Marine Corps, we were the DRB, the Dirty Rotten Bastards. And we called ourselves the Four Horsemen, our machine gun team. And all of us carried around one. And granted, we had to go to the store really quick because, you know, you're like, oh, we got to go. Oh, man, you need a machine gunner somewhere in the world. So then we'd panic. So we just grabbed 4 WCW wrestlers. I was the Nature Boy. The other one, there was Dogface. There was the Total Package and Stinger. And we called ourselves the Four Horsemen and wooed. And then, like, you know, like in the movies, no, it was weird. They don't have enough nerd Marines. Like, there's a lot of nerdy Marines, but in the movies, they don't show that. Dude, the whole time we're on, like, this really quiet, you know, mic. We're like, Nature Boy. Woo. This is Dogface Gremlin. Cleared. like it's just it made combat scenarios so much fun because we were idiots. And then like we'd have all this gear and nothing personal except on our packs we'd have one of the action figures. And it was amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. So I got to be Nature Boy, and of course the smallest Marine. And I was barely not the smallest Marine, but the smallest Marine in our machine gun unit was the Total Package. And then he had Stinger because he was from California, and then he had Dogface Gremlin, and he just looked like a tank of a man. I was like, yeah, right.
Oh, real? That's awesome. Man.
Yeah. So it was.
With those...
Go ahead.
Continue. No, I was about to say, with those figures, like, believe it or not, my mum ended up basically buying every single one of the base set. But the only two
that's a good mom. That's a 10 out of 10 mom. Go on.
Yeah, like, man, my mum's like, oh, tell me which one. Like, she ended up getting like the 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 initially, right? And then at another point in time, it's like, how do you like? I want to get more for you. Please tell me which ones you want. I want this one, that one, right. And I had almost the entire set. The only 2 that I didn't own was Flying Bright and Lex Luger. But I had everything. And I remember awesome. in that set specifically, it had the 4 Horsemen, but the carnation of Flair, Arn, Sid, and Wyndham.
Nice.
That particular carnation. There was obviously Rick and Scott Steiner. There was Sting. There was Doom. So Ron Simmons and Butch Reed as well. And then like obviously, and then I think after that there was obviously like the Pillman and Luger, which I never ever had, but I had all the rest of them.
I know it's weird,
but
I just want to add something before you. I mean, to cut you off there. Nowadays, people buy this and they keep them in their package collecting. Dude, we had promotions, we had storylines, we had the pad, I remember Dave Tees, who works for, I think, PW Insider now. I could be Fightful. I don't know. He's a kind of popular internet reporter. We lived next to each other. We were cousins. I was almost adopted by his family. But the thing is, it's weird because it was like, my name's Dave and his name is Dave. I was like, if I get adopted by your family, am I Dave Tees too? You know what I mean? But he had to, and it was so funny because he was a WWF fan and I was a WCW fan, so we'd always acquire money that wasn't ours to buy the pay-per-views. we were thugs. We were fucking thugs. Sorry, Tees. Tees maybe not as much as me. I don't want to throw him under the butt. I'm gonna get hashtag canceled by Dave Tees. But like I would steal whatever it took to get the WCW pay-per-views at my house, and he would get the WWF pay-per-views at his house, and then like. I hated Hogan because he always won. I hated Superman. I hated Hogan. If you're always gonna win, what's the point? So I always remember it was a long walk home. So like if Hulk Hogan was on, I would just leave. I don't think I've ever watched more than 1 or 2 Hulk Hogan matches. Got it. Leg drop. Hulk's up. Leg drop. Yay. Like I fucking despised it. So I always left early. But like even though he was the WCW fan and I was the WCW fan, he was the WWF fan, I was the KWF and he was the TCW. And then we had like competitions and invasions. Nowadays, I see kids and they're like, I'm not going to put it in the bag, so I'm going to hang it up. Like, what? No, you got to have a fucking match. You got to do some commentary. And then you'd always change your voice. Like...
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'd be like, I can't even do it. But we had like a fake announcer's voice, and then we were fucking hustlers. This is how I knew I was gonna be a promoter. We used to sell tickets to shows that we put on with our action figures to the local neighborhood kids. Like that's when you know you're meant to be a pro wrestling promoter, man. I mean, you obviously put on shows, right? Do you remember what your team? Because mine was the KWF.
That's right. one of the other fucking toys that's a part of the Galoob range was Z-Man Tom Zank. Because that was around the time Z-Man and Flying Brian were a fucking tag team.
That was a short time, but that was a
Right?
good time.
Yeah. And sorry to kind of divert there. Like I think I just kind of ran with it, did whatever. I don't think I actually labeled anything. But you're gonna spin out because I actually ended up getting the WCW ring, and it actually had it was one of the original rings that had the red plastic steel cage.
Dude, I'm not making this up. We couldn't steal a ring. So we could steal the action figures. I mean, acquire them without paying. So we had all the action figures and no ring. And then, like, I think the parents knew we were stealing. I don't know. They didn't rat us out. They didn't, but like, it was just weird that we had the whole collection of WWF and WCW action figures. And by the way, WWF was like 10 times bigger than WCW. But like,
Oh,
no one questioned why these two poor New Jersey boys that barely fucking could, I don't know, afford school lunch. You know, we couldn't. I'm lying. We couldn't afford school lunch. We got the tickets. And poor people know what that
yep,
means. You got the tickets for lunch, but we had every single wrestler ever. And like, I think they had to know we were stealing it. They just looked the other way. You know what I mean? There's no way an
yeah,
adult sees two poor kids that can't fucking buy a sandwich have every wrestling action figure. And Dave's dad, the other Dave, his dad made us a wrestling ring out of wood, and it was amazing. And then we just looked at each other and we're
awesome.
like, dude, we don't have to fucking wrestle on paper anymore because we like make paper boxing rings. I was like, dude, and I kid you not, this is how fucking sleazy I was. I'm like, we could sell tickets to everyone in the neighborhood because we had all the action figures in the ring, and then we had his story, and yeah. And the thing that pissed us off, we were like,
Oh man,
the big booking decision was how do we match up WWE guys and WCW guys? That was the thing, because like it was like the WWE toys were so huge, and then but then they eventually became the same size, and I was like, oh, booking problem
yes.
solved.
Like,
Man,
and
wrestling was so fun back then. Oh god, I loved it.
And I even remember go down to the local like toy store and stuff like that with like either if it wasn't with one of my grandparents, even when my granddad was alive, or like with my mum, and it's like the old WWF Pillsbury figures and stuff like that. Then it's like, oh, you can go ahead and choose one or two. All right, no worries, mum. And she's kind of looked at it. She goes, get the Hulk Hogan. Like, get the Hulk Hogan. And I had the Hulk Hogan that did because there was a couple of different Hulk Hogans. One was the press slam, and the other one was the one with the bear hug action. I ended up getting the
the
one with the
bear,
bear hug
the
action.
bear
But
hug action
mum's
was
like,
the
oh,
worst. That was the fucking worst. I remember the bear hug
like,
action. It was the worst.
some dickhead fucking broke it on me, which I was
Oh
not
yeah, and the
happy
fucking
about.
arms
But
fell off. Yeah.
no, no,
I
no. So it was fine. He ended up fucking ruining it, so the arm came off.
Oh, that
I was
sucks. Yeah.
pissed off, mate. I was pissed off. But Mum said to me, "Goes, yeah, you have to get Hulk Hogan." Because it's like, I don't know if it was because Hulk Hogan was big at the time. Oh, it's going to be worth something one day. Rah, 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 rah. Oh,
Oh
all
yeah.
right, cool. And then it's like that kind of mentality, like,
I
all right,
had
yeah, cool, I'll get Hulk Hogan.
in New Jersey when you're passed around a lot, you just call everyone cousin, uncle, aunt. I had a cousin. Blood,
Yeah.
who fucking knows? I don't know. Like in New Jersey, people confuse me. They're like, no, I this and this and that. I'm like, listen, dude, I don't give a fuck. But anyway, one of my cousins was a little bit wealthier than us, and he had every goddamn He-Man toy, every WWF toy, and every
Oh,
WCW
wow.
toy. No, this was like the monkey paw. The parents hung it on the wall perfectly and said it's a collector's item and it's going to get him through college. Do you know what it's like to be 6 to 10 years old in that range? Go to your friend's house and he's like, yeah, dude, I got all the He-Mans, I got all the WWE, I got all the Transformers. Has every fucking toy in the box and can't play with it. I was
Oh,
just like,
I'd go insane, dude. I used to love He-Man toys. They were the best.
I don't know. I
Turtle
have.
toys,
Maybe I have to
yeah.
contact on Facebook. I wonder if it got him through college because that had to be the
Oh, yeah.
worst. I was like, well, what the fuck? I just have a toy store in my house. I can't even do it because he had to have snapped one day and just opened them all up. He's like, I don't
Oh,
care about
you would have liked it.
college. It's Ram Man versus Hulk Hogan.
But it's like I understand kind of doing it now at the age that I am.
Yeah, of course,
But then
because it's
again,
nostalgia
looking at
and it's like collector's item. I understand at our age, it's nerdy, but I understand. I don't understand. Like if I bought my kids a pro wrestling thing, like if I bought it for me, I'd be like, I'm not gonna take it out of the box. Which, by the way, I probably will never. The problem I had. This is off topic. I don't like action figures anymore because when I worked in radio, I had to deal with WWE and got them all for free. And if you want to do anything that doesn't make you want to collect stuff, get a shit ton for free. Like, you remember when the Legends came out, when they first came out in that gold black box? I had every single one. But I mean, I'm saying I had 20 of every single one. And they're like, yeah, just give it away. And the thing is, like,
the Legends.
I don't know, it's like too much of a good thing. You know what I mean? It's like, here you go, you can have all of them. And it's like, well, thanks for ruining my fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the black and gold box. I used to have an Andre the Giant out of that set as well.
Nice. All right, so let's get back on track. Do you have anything? Because I got two questions that two topics that I want to kind of go over in our childhood. Unless you got something else.
No, dude. Like, as I mentioned there, so a lot of it was like going ahead and also renting tapes from the local video shop.
Oh yeah.
And whatnot. So ask away with your questions there as well. There.
All right. There's two more topics that we're gonna hit up. One, you got to think. Your favorite wrestler. Who was your first favorite wrestler?
That's easy.
All right, go ahead. You can go first. That's easy.
All right. For some reason, I don't know why, I used to love my tag team wrestling back in the day.
All right. Yeah, back in the day was good.
All right. In terms of, like, I can go ahead and literally name my favorite tag team and my favorite individual wrestler. But the tag team was always my first love.
All right.
Axe and Smash Demolition, so Bill Eadie and Barry Darso. And then obviously I loved Crush later on. Right? Hands down, my favorite, and obviously I always loved that. Like, believe it or not, my very first wrestling figure, right? And I think hence why, like, because I'm a manager, was my very first wrestling figure was the old WWF LJN Bendy's, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't the big one, but it was the smaller one, the smaller, like, the 5-inch figures or whatever they were.
Got
5-6-inch figures, right? Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Nice. Yeah, because I got to work in wrestling, I got to meet all these guys. Bobby the Brain Heenan is nothing but a sweetheart, and Demolition. I didn't like Demolition as a kid because I was like, these bitches ain't the Road Warriors. But I met them earlier. They later in life, they are the kindest, sweetest dads in the world. They always just talk about their families. Like, I thought Demolition would be like, this is how I pictured Demolition being, even as like kind of an adult. Like, we're fucking tough and fuck the Road Warriors. We're better than the Road Warriors. Like, that's how I envisioned them. And then I go backstage and I'm like, yeah, this is my daughter and this is my son and this is, oh man, and I'm like, wow, I didn't see that coming. They're just kindest, sweetest person in the world. Because I thought they would have like a huge grudge on the Road Warriors. Like, there's no way, because as a kid, you're like, these sons of bitches are the Road Warriors.
So the thing that I loved about Demolition, right? Because they were like, I guess in a way, they were kind of like the ultimate badasses, right? It was the whole idea of them coming to the ring. And it's like, but I think I more so thought also their run as a heel rather than an actual face run as
Dude,
well.
For the Fire Pro Wrestler, I'm putting down Demolition. No one has. I'm drafting your team for you. You made a list, but you're being fired. You don't know what you want, Yuri.
I know.
You're getting Liger and all 3 members of Demolition. Now that is your team.
Come on, at least give me Mike Awesome.
If he's in the game, I don't know. I think because the thing is, when you download people. If you download people and the original creator deletes it, I think you lose it. Or if there's a part. I had Mike Awesome, but I lost him. But anyway.
That sucks.
Yeah, I think Liger leading Demolition down to the ring, that's a pretty sweet combo.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, as I was saying with like Demolition, it's like fucking dude. You can't go wrong when you have somebody seasoned managing him like Mr. Fuji. Like Fuji, man.
Yeah.
Like friggin', and Mr. Fuji was the inspiration for me to come out to the ring with a fucking cane. No one else in fucking local wrestling really come out with a cane. Me,
Nice.
I was the only one to fucking do it in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Trip them up, the nice with cane and stuff. But what I loved about Demolition, it was like their intensity. They were badasses. I loved the way that they beat down their opponents, even though they did. Well, you know what? I'm gonna beat you into oblivion. You know what, boy? And just the way, like, but it's like they might not have had the necessarily that charisma, but it was just the way that they did their kind of screaming promos. It's kind of like you fucking listen. It's like, oh, they're gonna frigging go out there and they're gonna absolutely destroy and break whoever it was. Like you kind of get where I'm coming from. They kind of like threw out that line. Once you got hooked, you're like, I can't wait to watch them beat down whoever they're wrestling. And then it's like they kind of portrayed it with their powerhouse and grappling style. Run off the ropes, the big power slam as they're about to get up, to walk over to smash, tag, and then as the person would get up, double axe handle, double axe handle, double axe handle, double axe handle, beat down, beat down, beat down. The whole what was it? The whole like wrist lock or going to the top, the freaking double axe handle off the top rope. I love that shit. The way that they worked as a team, and the way that they manhandled people, which was just amazing.
Um, yeah. I don't know. I love that you're excited, but I was a Road Warriors guy. Like Road Warriors for life. Um, my favorite tag team probably is the Road Warriors, but there was a lot of good tag teams, but it's got to be the Road Warriors by far. I mean, they were the ultimate singles competition, and my favorite of all times, or I don't, maybe favorite of all time, but definitely favorite as my childhood was Ric Flair. I was raised, but I don't know. I was passed around a lot, but there was this guy, and we hated each other, but we had to live in the same house, and we had nothing in common except pro wrestling. Bear, I'll take you outside. This is on. This is on. What is this on now? It's on YouTube and Tinder. It's not on Tinder.
YouTube, no, YouTube, Podbean, Spotify at the moment.
Spotify, Grinder. I don't know what it's. I don't know. My favorite wrestler of all time is Ric Flair, and his favorite was Dusty Rhodes. And I remember that all the adults like Dusty Rhodes. And I was like, you're fucking losers. Ric Flair is a fucking winner. Ric Flair is how you want to be. And I remember, like, years later, I became a little bit successful, and I got, I worked in television and radio and stuff, and they gave me free suits. And they asked me, what suit did I want to wear? And I remember I said Armani. And I knew nothing about fashion. I still don't know anything about fashion, but I know at least a little bit. But when I was in that spot, like, what suit do you want to wear to, it's paid for. You can pick your own suit. If you know nothing about fashion and you're a young kid, you're in over your head. And I just remember going, Armani. And they're like, why? And I was like, fucking Ric Flair wore it. If it's good enough for the Nature Boy, it's good enough for me. And I remember I don't care about fashion. Like, I literally am the guy that I call myself, like, dress up boyfriend. Like, all right, what do you want me to wear? All right, I'll wear that. That make you happy? You know what I mean? That's my attitude.
Yeah.
But I remember when I wore the Armani suit, I felt great. Not because of fashion or suit, because I was like, I fucking made it. I'm fucking wearing Flair's suit. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And I remember I always thought Dusty Rhodes was a loser. But then when I grew older, I was like, oh, no, I understand. I understand why older people liked him. You know what I mean? And, yeah. So, to me, I was a Ric Flair guy. I was a Ric Flair and Road Warriors guy. I thought it was it. I love the Four Horsemen. I don't know. There was just that confidence and that, Yeah, because, like, Dusty Rhodes, Hard Times, one of the greatest promos of all time. But you're 6. You're like, fuck you. I'd rather have the fucking limousine. You know what I mean? And then when you hit Hard Times, you're like, man, that son of a bitch, that son of a plumber was saying something to me. You know what I mean? It spoke to me.
The other team that really, like, I think that really kind of resonated with me and I absolutely loved, and it was because it was like one of the first couple of, like, tag team bendy packs that I got as well. I don't know what it was. For some reason, my mum just always ended up buying the figures in multiple for the wrestling for me.
I mean, I bet
right?
you it was cheaper. It's probably one of those things. Oh, he can have two. You know what I mean?
But it was like there was like one day she ended up coming back. She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you some more wrestling figures." No worries. And she came back with like fucking 6 or 8 fucking like of the tag team and bendies.
You're the
And I'm
black.
like,
Am I an asshole for thinking you're a piece of shit for not stealing your wrestlers? This
I
motherfucker
was
had
I
a
was
pair
spoiled. Like,
that
there's a reason
loved them.
behind it, but I'm not gonna go into it
Nah, it's okay.
in the
It's okay. I'm
podcast.
just busting your
Um,
balls.
no, that's all right.
You're,
And it's
as
like
they would say in
seriously,
the Mighty Ducks, damn cake eater.
Papa, the Nikolai and the Iron Chick. Oh,
Oh, they were
fucking love them.
awesome.
Two of my fucking favorite wrestlers, yeah. But it's like freaking obviously like when it come to like a lot of the tag teams, they always had the fucking accompanying managers, which I generally liked. So like I always loved Bobby the Brain Heenan just because this dude is Bobby Heenan, you know? I always loved fucking Fuji. And like one of my all-time favorite managers, right? And you talk to a lot of people going, "Oh, who's your all-time favorite manager?" Rah, rah, rah. Obviously, it's always going to be Bobby Heenan, but one of my other all-time favorite managers, the Doctor of Style, the Slickster. Slick.
Oh, yeah, he could talk.
Oh, yeah, man. Wait a minute, I ain't no job, so
Yeah, my favorite.
honesty is the best policy. Hey, oh, fuck.
Nah, my
It's so
favorite
good.
manager is probably definitely Bobby the Brain Heenan. I thought he was the man. Paul Heyman was pretty awesome back in the day. So those are the managers that I loved. All right,
And
go ahead.
And sorry, and the other team that I absolutely loved was the fabulous Rougeau brothers, Jacques and Raymond.
Really, I can get one of their relatives on the podcast. We used to do a podcast with one of their relatives.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. So this will be it. We got about 20 minutes ish. We don't have to go exact. We're not professionals. But now, when did you discover it was predetermined? And was it a certain date? Was it someone that broke it to you? Was it an event? When did you know that pro wrestling was the F word? Predetermined. I don't know how to spell. Do you
Shit.
remember? Or
Oh,
was it
not
always?
really, but I know it was. No, it was definitely years later because, like I said, when we had, because you and I, we always have conversation, or at least a couple conversations now, off recording the podcast, right? But
Yeah,
there
and
was a
I
period
think
of time where
next episode we're gonna
I
be
got,
talking about kayfabe.
yeah, definitely. Um, but it's like I kind of got, obviously being a dumb kid, I got sucked in to the whole wrestling, right? Thinking like when it comes to the Undertaker, like, oh shit, this guy is actually like he's undead. Like he gets hit. He can't like nobody can hurt him. Nobody bought into that shit, yeah?
Oh man, I,
Right?
I changed the
So
channel. I was like,
yeah,
click. So
but like
two different kids watching the same product having different reactions.
and it's like yeah, it's like obviously it's I think it would have been like I must have started being maybe anywhere between about 9, 10 or 10, 11 when I actually figured it out and go, oh, okay, cool, no worries. Like, because then everything slowly started to change with the wrestling and stuff like that. And then
So
when I was
so,
in high school,
so
it was
it
just
was an easy transition.
say so. And then it's like years later when I first got into actually doing wrestling training and stuff like that, like the peek behind the curtain, I'm going, now I truly understand.
Got it.
You get where I'm coming from? It's like once I had that peek behind the curtain and had that taste, I'm going, get it. So then get it now.
Yeah. Me, I remember the exact fucking day. And I always thought Hulk Hogan was fake. I always thought WWF was fake. But not my beloved WCW, not AWA, not USWA. Though that was the real fucking deal. And even WWF, I didn't think it was fake. I was just like, they're putting on a show to pretend to be WCW. Like, I really thought that as a kid, 100%. You know what I mean? I was like, I wouldn't even know if WWF was fake. I'd just be like, I guess I would say it was fake. Like, I'd be like, they're actors pretending to be wrestlers. That's what I thought. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, WWF makes a movie about pro wrestling. WCW is pro wrestling. The difference between, like, to me, WWF was Rocky with way shittier writers, and WCW was Mike Tyson. You know what I mean? Like, they're connected, but they're not.
I can actually see that. Yeah, I get you.
That's how I felt as a kid. And then I remember Andre the Giant was a fucking monster. Like, he was just destroying people. You know, and especially if people are like, well, Andre Giant got slammed by 32 people. Yeah, but we didn't fucking know that. And I remember Andre the Giant coming because if you watch the territories and you watch other companies, Andre the Giant was going from town to town, and he would just destroy, go to the next town, destroy, go to the next town. So to me, I was like, when Andre the Giant went against Hulk Hogan, same thing with Bam Bam Bigelow because he's from the New Jersey area. Rest in peace, Bam Bam. But when Andre went to WF, I was like, that's it. This is a real fucking wrestler. And this goddamn fucking Hollywood bullshit. He is going to break fucking Hulk Hogan. I'm like, Hulkamania is fucking dead. Fuck that guy. Long live the Giant. Obey. You know what I mean? I was that guy.
Of course.
And of course, I grew up in sleazy New Jersey. So my fucking uncle's like, dude, I could get a couple bucks out of this kid. He's like, Hulk Hogan's going to win. I know he's going to win. So how the fuck do you know he's going to win? You don't know shit. Hulk Hogan's an actor. Andre the Giant's a fucking athlete. And they're like, I'm 100% shoot with you. So my uncle goes, all right, let's fucking make a bet. I don't know what the bet is. Maybe $10, $20. But it was like my life savings at the time. Because, little kids don't have much money. And I fucking put it all on the line. And I was so cocky about it. Like, I looked him right in the fucking eye, slammed down my money. He's like, if you think that actor Hulk Hogan can beat the 8th wonder of the world, Andre the Giant, you're a fucking idiot. And I remember, and like, I had an aunt, and she's like, if I can, maybe you should kank it. You know what I mean? Because, like, no one wanted to tell me that it wasn't real, but at the same time, they're like, maybe we should kank this, maybe? And I was like, no. And then on top of that, they were, I can't fucking stop laughing. On top of that, like, I was just like, you ever see the Family Guy with SpongeBob? He's like, you think there's no fucking SpongeBob and living under the sea? Like, I was that confident. And then I remember watching WrestleMania 3, and I watched the update, and I was like, dude, this actor's gonna die. And then he goes for the fucking slam, and it all came crushing down. I was like, this isn't real. Andre the Giant took a dive. Like, I didn't even think, because, like, here's the thing. Like, in my head, I was like, Andre the Giant took a dive for WWF's money. Not because, you know what I mean? I was like, how can Andre be so dishonorable? I instantly knew on that slam it was fake. I was like, this ain't real. And then as soon as he fucking hits the leg drop, I punch my cousin, flip the table, tell everyone to fuck off. Like, it is, my world is crushed, and I am flipping out. And then he's like, you don't have to pay me. And I'm like, no, I'm a man of my fucking word. Unlike Andre the Giant, I throw the money at my uncle. I go down, I rip off all the pro wrestling, and for like maybe a month, maybe 2 months, I fucking hated pro wrestling. I was like the dirt sheet guy before the dirt sheet. I was like, like, I hated it for like 2 weeks, and I would like yell at kids, like, it's fucking not real. Andre the Giant's a bitch. This ain't fucking real. None of it's real. And then I'm questioning if baseball's real.
Oh yeah. Dude,
and then I fucking hated it so bad. And then my aunt's like, well, did you like it? And I was like, I loved it. He's like, but you like movies, and you get that speech. And I was like, yeah, right. And then I was completely over it, which to me, a little kid time, it felt like I was a fucking asshole for 8 years. In reality, I think it was like a week. Because, like, that's the thing, though. Like, when you tell a story as an adult, you're like, oh, it's a long period of time. So you're thinking, oh, it's 2 years. But then you're like, I didn't miss an event, so it couldn't have been that long. You know what I mean? But I just remember that like I flipped the fuck out. I punched my cousin. I threw money at him. Oh, it was not my proudest moment, but I just remember. And then after that, I was fine. But I just remember, and the thing is too, like I still like even now because like I was like I can't believe he did that for that actor Hulk Hogan. I can't believe Andre has no honor. And then like after that, but yeah, I remember it was like a week or two. I was just yelling at kids like, "Yo, dumbass, it's not real."
Oh,
And like the older kids are like, "Of course, you fucking moron." And then I was like, "I bet you the Mets ain't real." It's a figment of our imagination. Fuck you, Jets. You don't play football.
hey, apparently, according to some Americans, Australia's not real.
I know. I love the fact. I love the fact that there's tons of conspiracy theories. I just love it. I love the fact too that it's someone's pathetic job to make sure that if the conspiracies are real or not. God, I hate humanity.
I get you. I get you, bro.
Yeah, no, because here's the thing: if we titled this video "Australia's Not Real," you know, like if we just title it, be like, "Hey, you know, Slow Burn Podcast number 3." I love the fact that we called it that, and like we just made it up as fly. But Slow Burn Podcast number 3, even though number 1 I don't think was actually called the Slow Burn Podcast. Maybe definitely not in the beginning, and I don't know, man. I just imagine if we just at the end put Australia's not real. That means someone would have to actually go through that and then put a link to saying how we're conspiracy theorists and that Australia is really real. I don't know. I just love the fact that that's where we've come in human society. I just love it. I love the fact that we have fallen so far down. And you know what I fucking blame? Andre the Giant for fucking selling out to that actor Hulk Hogan.
But and then the thing is for me, and then like years later, right? Obviously around the WCW and WWF, sort of like the Monday Night Wars, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that even though that I knew that obviously it's the F word that shall not be named on podcast, right?
I think I said it.
Predetermined, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, because I was that passionate about wrestling, I got sucked into it. I still bought into what was going on because of the way that it was presented. It was trying to be a reality-based setting in WCW. You get where I'm coming from? I still, all these years later, but like I think even though that we know what wrestling is, we still, in certain instances, there's always something that just strikes a hard chord for us and just makes us sort of suspend our belief and just get sucked into it again.
Yeah, well,
and that's what I love about wrestling.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like we used to always talk about this on our Thanksgiving shows, like especially now. I mean, it's always been bad, but now it's ridiculous. It's great to talk. Pro wrestling is that friend that it's okay to talk about and no one is legit really offended. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, fucking Andre the Giant this, Andre the Giant that. But at the end of the day, you're like, all right, like, I don't know. I think it's not offended. It's escapism, and it's something that's fun. That it's like, I don't know. It's just something you can talk about. No one really should get offended. Knock on wood.
But it's just being a performer, though. I lose my shit when people call it the F word. Right, but that's another conversation for another podcast.
Yeah, definitely. And we can talk about it. Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll have a pod. We'll do a kayfabe podcast, and then we'll have the F word podcast.
Yeah, I drop a lot of F bombs there.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I think that's it. Anything else you want to talk about? Plug where we've been.
Sorry, what was that?
Plug where the show's going and anything else you want to do?
Yeah, right. So obviously we're hoping to do big things with the podcast. As discussed earlier in the episode, you can now find us on Podbean. You can find us on Spotify. You in the future you'll be able to find us on Google Music and Apple iTunes. So we're just waiting for the approval on those other two. But Spotify and Podbean. So it's the slow burn with KocoSports and Yuri the Black. Um, so what you would generally make it, what would make it a little bit easier to find as well would be KS Slow Burn, all one word, guys. Um, and I guess we're at the stage where we can plug our individual things as well, Dave, I'm assuming, because at the end of the
Go
day.
for it. Go for it, pal.
Um, well, for myself, you can go ahead and find me on Twitter, Instagram, um, at Yuri the Black. Uh, on Facebook, just type for Yuri the Black. It should be Pro Wrestling Manager, Yuri the Black, Pro Wrestling Manager and Twitch streamer. And at the moment, I'm just currently on hiatus, just due to some just a personal reasoning. But you can always find my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Yuri the Black. Over to you, Mr. Coco.
I do a bunch of stuff. Check out DaveCoco.com. We're gonna try to make that better. Twitch.tv/KocoSports, KocoSports.net. I'm hoping to be a full-time content creator. Got books, all that stuff, podcast. So just trying to get ready for retirement and hustle into that nerd world. But yeah, definitely check it out. Much love. Yeah. So this will be up on YouTube, Koco Sports, and me and Yuri the Black. We'll be doing a Fire Pro thing once, someone fixes the roster.
Yep.
Who's
I wonder who that's gonna be. Yeah.
I don't know. You're in the Black's like, okay, we're on ESPN, Times Square, and on the moon. And I'll be like, all right, so you're the Black.
Daddy.
You're the Black. You got Liger and Demolition. First off, that's pretty amazing.
Woo.
There you go. Your team is done. Like, I love that Yuri the Black put a lot of thought into his list, and he gets a team that not even listed. Like, yo, Yuri the Black, no. You can't go. You got all three members of Demolition, and you have Liger. That is your team. Liger.
Lock it in.
I think Liger is leading Demolition down to the ring. I think that's you can't beat that.
But it has to be the CTU Liger, the Black Liger.
All right, we'll have to see, okay? we'll have to see. Anyway, yeah, on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and on the rest of the world, do whatever is equivalent of like, comment, and subscribing.
That's right, yeah.
All right.
Like,
episode 4 will be kayfabe episode. Episode 5 will be the F-word password, the F-word podcast. And then I think after that, we're going to have to come up with some new topics. Scratch your head. Okay. This is a slow burn, a.k.a. a learning experience. We'll get it right. All right, Yuri. Love you, brother. With
Love
that...
you, brother. Thanks again.
No problem. With that, I am over. Hey, ba-dum-bum-bum-bum.